Hello and welcome to Focus on Liberia. You are watching Roundtable Africa. I am Sekou Kele, your host, and I'm here today with my co-host again, Edward Amara, and we are discussing the topic. We have Amos Sawyer resign from politics. What next for the progressives of Liberia? We are joined here today by uh, our panelists. We have Sister Bridget Yuja from Canada, Fano Kamajan Kamara, he's not new on the show, all the way from Liberia, and also Anthony Sie, the host for Hour of Politics on Focus on Liberia, is also here with us. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Roundtable Africa.
We want to join in welcoming our guest on this show. But it is going to be fantastic, and we highly welcome you, and especially focused across the globe. As usual, it is going to be an interactive program, very interesting, and we are going to provide answers to all the interesting questions that will be coming around. You are highly welcome, our guest.
Thank you very much, Edward Amara. So for this is Sister Bridget's first time on this show, so we would like to introduce her for our audience, because this is the first time she's appearing on this show. Sister Bridget Yuja Wilson, she is a Liberian based in Canada, Edmonton, and she holds a degree in social work, a degree in child and youth family counseling with a master's in counseling and psychology. Sister Bridget is a social justice advocate, a philanthropist. Her lineage is from Harper, Maryland County, Grand Bassa. Sister, welcome to Roundtable Africa. We are happy to have you here.
Thank you, Brother Sekou.
Yeah. Fano Kamara is not new to our audience. He's been here several times. He's a Pan-Africanist, a writer. He is one of our political commentators here. Brother Kamara, welcome to Roundtable Africa.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be on.
Thank you very much. Before we proceed, we would like to, as we always do, we get our latest news from around Africa from Edward Amara. He will let us know what is happening around the continent for a few minutes from there before we proceed. Edward Amara, what is happening around Africa?
Thank you very much. The continent of Africa is always full of interesting news. Today we have a lot of news emanating out of the continent of Africa. First, we go into the northern part of Africa. Watch at Egypt. Egypt President Abdul Fattah al-Sisi is making plans to transfer the capital city of Cairo to the new administrative town for 28 miles or 45 kilometers away east of the capital city, Cairo. The government gave certain pieces of excuse that the capital will help to minimize the congestion that is found within Cairo, and most of the government embassies and parastatals that belong to the government will be transferred. So with that congestion and the service being rendered to the people will definitely be effective and efficient. But based on the population in Cairo, Cairo is a city over 6 million people, and thinking about the government close relationship with other countries, especially the fighting like ISIL and other things, Cairo is no longer favorable to take an abandonment of everything. So the government have given that excuse, and they hope that project to be completed in the next 6 months. From there, we go into East Africa and DRC Congo, in the capital city of Bukavu. 6 people were actually killed yesterday, 4 police officers, an army officer, and also 1 civilian. They came under attack by the Janjaweed militia, who have actually been fighting into the North Kivu region for quite a long time. 36 of the assailants were arrested. The governor of the South Kivu region have actually given hope to the people that the situation have been put under control. They have all the right to come out and live their peaceful life. However, being that the region is used with frequent attack, the people think that the situation is still volatile, and we didn't want to take the government word for certainty, especially the governor, and they are urging the government of DRC Congo to come to their aid to ensure that attacks like that have been prevented. We also come into West Africa. High-profile killing goes on the rampage in Liberia. over the past few months, a lot of alleged creatures killing have actually been happening into Monrovia. However, the latest have taken the country by shock. The president of two former Liberian president's sons are the latest victim. One is a reverend by the name of William Arab Talbot, who is William Arab Talbot, the third son of the deceased Liberian president who ruled Liberia for 9 years when his regime was being overthrown by Samuel Kedo. I think his death also was his father also met his death when his body was dismembered by Samuel Kedo-led military regime. His body was found yesterday in a pool of blood in the capital city, Monrovia. Before that, his death also came as a week when an immigration officer who is a female, Maldo Elliott, body was found in as resident in a pool of blood. And also in September this year, another body of a former president of Liberia, sons, was also found dead, John Talbot. And his father also was the longest serving president of Liberia. The Liberians are actually urging Judge Oponria to actually respect his social contract that he signed with the people, especially when he went on television to say that Liberians should learn how to protect themselves, especially they should plant security cameras into their home to prevent assault or attack like such, so that they can help the police investigation. When you watch at the typical Liberian society, people are poor and they hardly even get their complete daily bread by day to eat. So the citizens are thinking that the president's statement was careless and they need a more responsive and proactive statement than the president and to utter such statement against the citizen. Then finally, we go into Zambia. Zambia, the former president 8 have actually been arrested. Amos Changa, who was the spokesperson for former president of Zambia, Edgar Lungu, was actually arrested for insulting and disturbing the Anti-Corruption Commission Act. His house was actually being searched by the ACC, claiming that he involved into corrupt practices during the regime of the former boss. The man and his sister-in-law, including the wife, were apprehended, but later on they were released on bail when they made a serious attack on the anti-corruption officers, claiming that they are witch hunting them. The man is innocent. He has nothing to do in corruption, but they asked him to allow them do their work and they shouldn't disturb justice. But according to them, they made the situation so volatile and their personalities were being insulted and some even suffered some physical assault. So a case was being tabled against them into the police station. They have actually been charged for disturbing the rule of law or disturbing police action while they were trying to investigate certain things, and also for insulting the officers of the ACC, including the police. But they have actually been released on bail. So far, so good. These are some of the news coming from the north, east, and south of Africa.
Thank you very much, Edward Amara, the West African correspondent for Focus on Liberia. Indeed, there's so much to discuss about Africa, but for the sake of today's program, we will focus on our topic. Dr. Amos Sawyer resigns from politics. What is next for progressives of Liberia? To discuss this topic, we'll be looking at the following questions. Who are the progressives? We would like to define this group of people, and we'll see who belongs in that bracket and who doesn't. Then what is the historical contribution, or what are the historical contributions of the progressives of Liberia? The third question here, are Liberian progressive forgotten heroes or failed intellectual elite? Because Liberians believe the book people are failed intellectual elite. We will look into that if it's true or false. The fourth question is, what lessons can be learned from the rise and the fall of the Liberian progressives? Without wasting time, we will take our first question now. Who are the progressives? And we will start with Sister Bridget. You see, so before you answer the question, we know that three groups of people mark the political history of Liberia. We have the pioneers, the founding fathers, who found the True Whig Party, and they had their philosophy, they had their good and their bad and their ugly, but they are a group of people that mark our political history. The second group we have is the PRC, the military junta that took over in 1980. They brought a revolution that brought us to where we are today. Good or bad, that's not a discussion. The third group is the progressives that are often forgotten. What role do they play and who are they? And why are Liberia not talking about them? Sister Yuya Bridget, who are the progressives is what we want to know.
Thank you, Brother Sekou. Can everybody hear me clearly?
Yes, we can hear.
Okay. So, Brother Sekou, I'm afraid that I'm not going to define the progressive in the context of what you just broke down, because based upon our own personal ideologies, progressive might look different from one person to the other. I mean, like even a militant, chaotic person can come about and say, I am progressive because I want change. That's a very subjective term. But when I look at progressive, I'm looking at social reform. I'm looking at those who seek social justice for the greater good of everyone. I have some little issues with going back to the founding fathers of progressive, just because I wouldn't want to take up so much of your time here. But was that really in the interest of the entire population of Liberian people, or was that just in the interest of a few group of people who wanted to keep power within the confines of their own covers?
Thank you very much. Siddiqui, the questions to you. Who are the progressives?
Well, I want to thank you for having me, and also thank my sister for the very brilliant intro. I think, like she said, progressive. The term progressive means different things to different people. But generally speaking, a progressive person is a person seeking reform for more inclusive participation in economic development, in political governance, and in our context in Liberia, the progressive are a group of people who stood up against the oligarchy, who felt that there was a need to open up the system, the political system. There was a need to open up the country for broad participation of the rest of the people, instead of us having an oligarchy rule for more than 100 years. So those group of people who fought to bring down the oligarchy, or to open a democratic space to the rest of the country, are the ones who usually term as progressive. But progressive, as an institution, we look at them as a group of students or group of activists, group of political activists who form themselves into movements that they term as progressive movements. So in that context, those are the progressive. But progressive as a broad terminology, like the sister said, anyone aspiring for reform, whether it's political, economic, or social, you tend to have a more progressive attitude towards life and wanting to move from one stage to another for the betterment of society.
Thank you very much, Siddiqui Kamara. So those who want inclusiveness, those who, because the reason why I mentioned the PRC and the True Party from the beginning, because these were the ruling elite, and you had this group of people who wanted multi-party democracy, who wanted change, who wanted the participation of everybody. So they belong, like you rightly said, they belong to that group that we call progressives. But still, you know, there are among themselves, there are certain people they try to distance themselves from and say these ones are not progressives, and we are the progressive, because these other people, they are just part of us when it is convenient for them, but they are not really progressive. But those who really champion the ideology of progressives is what I wanted us to define. So Edward Amara, who are the progressives really, and what does it mean to be a progressive?
Yeah, as they rightly said, to make an addendum to it, I think the progressive is a kind of political philosophy that is based on social reform. It is something that is done in the interest of the society. It could be based on economic development. It could be based on infrastructural development. It could also be, because when you watch at it in the political term, you will understand that when we talk about progressive, the people who are aiming to see positive reformation in the society. We, our brothers rightly mentioned, you may have a few corrupt elite who are ruling the country, then you may think, this is just like in Africa, we think that democracy is good governance. So the progressive become to the extent that good governance must be practiced, the people must be known, they must be seen, they must be involved. They should be people who determine the manner in which the society should progress. So when you talk about progressive, all about advancement. So that is what we mean.
Thank you very much. So to bring us back to Sister Bridget, The definition, I think for me, I kind of agree with most of you with the definition you just gave. So let's look at the professor that just resigned, Amos Sawyer. So Amos Sawyer himself, he considered himself to be a progressive based on his political ideology, his activism until 1990 when he became the interim leader. Do you think for what he has done so far, looking at his record, does that really fit into what we call progressive? Because if young people now want to emulate these people, they want to also become progressive. Do you think Amos Sawyer is a good example to copy?
Thank you, Brother Sekou. Amos Sawyer and his cohorts, I would say, laid the then foundation for what we call now in Liberia as progressive. But in order to forge a way forward, we must look at what they have done, the impact that has had on Liberia, and question if we want to take the exact same step or forge a new way forward. And the progressive now in Liberia, like the student bodies, I would say like those are neo-progressive. They're new, they're modern. And I'm sorry, I'm trying to carefully choose my words on this platform. So I don't rob anybody up wrongly. But when we look at Liberia history, I wouldn't say progressive have been instrumental in some of the riots or field protests that have happened in the country. However, had they structured themselves in a way that would have been a little less chaotic, things would have looked differently than what our history showed. Can we emulate the example of Amos Sawyer and Pomakpa or the likes of others who walked that path? If you ask me my honest opinion, I would say progressive now must forge a new way forward. We use terms like the militants and comrades. Looking at Liberia history and coming from a post-war society, what does that mean to the younger generation? We're dealing with people with PTSD. We're dealing with child soldiers. And we call ourselves progressive, but we're using words like militants and comrade. That could be misinterpreted. And we're also dealing with a huge population who are not educated enough to interpret that. And Amos Sawyer, he laid the groundwork. He left his legacy. But when we brought about democracy to our people, our common people in Liberia, I don't believe that's a term that they truly understood because we didn't give them the tool to define what democracy is. We didn't educate them enough about a new system that was introduced to them. So, like I said, I'm being very careful how I touch on it, but Amos Sawyer did left an okay legacy. I wouldn't say a great legacy that we can pick apart and take the good ones from there and follow. But for our young progressive now in our society, it's about time that we sit at the table and discuss what that really means. I tell you, Sekou, I have seen several protests happen in Liberia. And when I sit back and watch, I ask myself, is this what progressive is? It's just so chaotic. It's just so violent. Can we take a different approach in addressing the ills and issues that Liberia is faced with at this time? So I will reserve my comments. Like I said, I'm picking my words here very carefully. Going back to your question, I believe that Amos Sawyer left an okay or a good legacy that we can pick apart the good and bad and carry forward. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Sister Bridget. That leads to the second question, Edward Amara. What is or what are the historical contributions of the progressives in Liberia? You know, for me, there are few things that come to mind. We say they brought about a multi-party democracy. Is it helping? Well, has it developed the country? Well, I'm not sure. But at least there is this participation of people. Before, it was about the elitism. The elites were in charge of the country. The ordinary people were just there to be subjects, and they could not. It's like we were in a monarchy somehow. So, but at least they brought about young people speaking out, democracy going to the grassroots, the people having voice. So that's what we can think about, that they brought multi-party democracy. Now, rule of law, good governance, corruption, all these things. Did the progressive tackle these things? I don't know. So can you really tell what are the historical contributions? Because if I want to be a neo-progressive today, what kind of book can I pick up and say, this is what they've done? This is their legacy, and I want to defend this legacy. Because for the ordinary Liberian on the street, they were progressive, they just think about broke people. They say broke people fail Liberia. This is how the new people on this political scene, this is what they put in the head of the young people now. Broke people fail Liberia. That means, in other words, the more educated you become and you want to become progressive, the more they see you as dangerous and corrupt. So that is the philosophy we have in the country. Is it because the old progressive did not really contribute anything, or there are some historical contributions that have been ignored?
No, thank you very much. In the first place, you cannot be successful until your successor succeeds. Today, Amos Sawyer has resigned. Maybe arguably he left a good legacy, but you are going to watch at the society in Liberia in general. Because for you to judge Amos Sawyer's legacy, you must have a careful education, and you watch at some of the things that he did. Maybe you try to watch at him in the 70s, even during the overthrow. You watch at him during the time he became an interim president into Liberia. All of those contributions. But it is because we found ourselves into the society where illiteracy is very high. So people may tend to watch at the progressive mentality on a different term. Because one, you rightly stated about multi-democracy or multi-party system. It's very fine, because even though things like that may be found into our constitution, but if you do not have somebody who can advance the idea, it will be very difficult. But when the advancements of those ideas came, how was it actually happening? Maybe the manner in which he marketed it may be good or may not be good. And to be marketing it, you are also going to watch at the targeted people or the targeted population. Because there are times the way people watch and analyze situation may be slightly different. So Amos Sawyer, yes, he did a lot. Arguably, he did a lot, because to become an interim president, especially when you try to try to bring to mediate peace between a warlike Taylor, and when Liberia was in a volatile situation, think he involved into the drafting of Liberia constitution. You can even relate him to Doe regime. Doe was a dictator on several occasions. He was in prison. You think about his educational contribution. You think about some of the books that he wrote. And you also link it.
But people are saying that very constitution is not progressive enough now.
But that is why I'm saying you are going to watch at it now. Because when you are seeing a progressive constitution, it should be something that should relate to the common man, because you are watching at the common man interest here. But maybe how many people even can judge that constitution constructively? But there are certain Liberians today, they may be educated, but they are not even au fait with the type of constitution. So rating his contribution is very controversial, and one should be very careful to watch at it. Because when you watch at certain things, the physical things are there, but those that he did that are only in theory, but he also affected the Liberian society in a positive means. But many people are actually aware of it. So to me, yes, arguably he did a lot, because he became an interim president. He was one in prison. We saw, I read about university students protesting for him. He also suffered a lot of other detention, torture from the like of Taylor, and even especially from Samuel K. Doe. So all of those things are there. Maybe, but I think and feel that when you watch at the Liberian society, the contribution of the progressive people who call themselves the progressive in Liberia, it's not anything tangible, because it is not reflecting on the society. It is not reflecting on the society setting. Still, you cannot call yourself a progressive. You have been preaching this. Still, the elite continue to enjoy. Corruption continue to be on the high. People continue to suffer. Infrastructural development remain to be poor. Illiteracy high. Because when you talk about progressive, you talk about economic, you talk about social reform, you talk about holistic development of the country. But those things we are definitely not reflected. So in theory, it is there, but in practical, no, I can't judge him. So
thank you very much. Says Bridget,
and I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, sir. Go ahead, Brother Sekou. I was just really enjoying what my brother here, Edward, was elaborating on. It is true. It in theory is there, but in reality, can we measure it? Like how measurable is the progressive in Liberia? We went from one wing party to a multi-party system. Well, my question is, was those system to fulfill the needs of the people, or was that just in the interest, like I said again, of a certain people? The education system, I have yet to see one president in Liberia that really increased the education rate to the max that our people can understand all of these things that we're bringing forward. We did not enlighten the poor man or the native man. I mean, like these people who brought about progressive also had the colonial discipline in them, that they brought a little bit of that colonialism to Liberia, where certain people were marginalized. Even like right now, my name is Bridget Wilson. I tell people that if ever I go someplace and they're looking for Bridget Wilson, they look past me and they're looking for someone else. So just a few years ago, I incorporated my indigenous name that was given to me upon birth, but been hidden, because in a society like Liberia, that was frowned upon having an indigenous name. So this group of progressive, yes, they did excellent. They brought about multi-party system, but how have those multi-party system impacted Liberia in a positive way? And sorry, Brother Sekou, I think you had a question for me in there, and I just
that's good. That's good. It's good for you to elaborate like this. You know, the follow-up question will come, but you can go ahead. Yeah.
Like I was saying, the legacy is in theory, but in practice, it looks completely different. So Amos Sawyer and the rest of others who started this movement, they did a good job, but they could have done more by educating the masses. It's so easy, Brother Sekou, to get an illiterate man and just quickly explain to him and give him some placards, and he would be running in the street behind you. But when you meet an educated man, it becomes a little bit more difficult, because he wants the detail. He's going to ask you the why. Why do you want me to do what you want me to do? He's going to question you. So I believe that those past people really did took advantage of the illiteracy of our people to get them in the streets and do what they did. I don't know how contributing that was to our society. So my thing remains, and I said in the beginning, I will say it now, moving forward as progressive Liberians, we must sit at the table and question our past, to be able to reevaluate our future if we are to move Liberia forward in a progressive way. Because brother Edward there mentioned the holistic piece. That piece is missing, Brother Sekou. As an advocate for children, women, and youth, I sit back and I listen to Liberia politics. I can barely hear the concerns of women and children in that discourse. Rape is not at the center of the topic. Gender inequality, equity is not a part of that discussion. Our youth, we term them as Zogos. When I went to Liberia, I told a friend, I'm like, do not call them that name. Because when you call them that name, you are repositioning them in a way that society has already positioned them. These are not Zogo, but these are actual victims of what we caused upon them from the wall. So when we say we're progressive, we should not just be focusing on the politics of things, but we should be looking at the social economic condition of the country, and we should be looking at inequality or equity of our society and how we can move things forward with education and so much more than just the everyday political discourse. And you can see why there's a certain distrust when it comes to progressive and the general population of Liberia. It's like, oh, you guys are the troublemaker.
Right.
We need to ask ourselves why, but because it goes back to that history where
sorry for cutting you off. If you are a savior and the people you came to save consider you to be dangerous, then there's something wrong with the way you are applying your methodology. There's something wrong with your methodology.
My brother Sekou, and that is why we must go back to the drawing board and ask ourselves that wider question: why? Why do they see you this way? Because Taylor, I can say, came as a progressive. As I said in the beginning, progressive can be very subjective. Change in of itself is very subjective. Taylor came as progressive. Others came as progressive. But where their contribution to Liberia actually falls under the principle of what progressive is. So you can see why the distrust with progressive over the historical period in our people lies. And that is why it's important for us to come back to the drawing board and figure out all of those things or issue that affects the progressive in a negative way.
All right. Yeah. Thank you very much, sis. Final, can you hear me, Mr. Kamara? You have to unmute. You have to unmute. So here is another issue. People, there are two, when you ask people on the street today about the progressives, there are those who are pro-progressive. They will say the progressive were betrayed. They had traitors within, and then they also were betrayed by the people. Some people will say the progressive betrayed the people. That's how some people will put it. So those who say the progressive betrayed the people, they use Ellen Johnson Sirleaf as an example. Ellen in the 70s was on the street, in the 60s, 80s or so. She was on the street against Talbot. She was what you would call, quote unquote, progressive. She wanted change. She advocated for a lot of stuff. She went to jail. But the same Ellen took power and maintained the status quo. So we say she betrayed the progressive or she betrayed the people. So if we have progressive themselves yelling, giving all the best solution, they are these idealistic people. But when they come close to power, they do opposite. Then we are wondering whether the progressive thing is just a means to use to come close to power. Because I must say recently I got involved with some political organization in the country that I saw as progressive. I don't want to mention names. And we are into this group. We are trying to be progressive, bring ideas, bring change. As a social worker myself, I brought a lot of ideas on the board to look at social service in the country. But I saw that most of the young people, they were concerned about getting position in government, how they can have some ministerial posts, how they can become senator, how they can lobby and have their way. It was never about structural change. It was not really about the people. It was about they having some power. So this kind of thing, when I saw it, I resigned. So I see that they were not really about change. They were about, let us get some part of this cake, this national cake that is being shared. So Kamara, I want you to tell me, is it the progressive that have betrayed their own ideology, or it is the people that betrayed them? You have to unmute, please. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm really having difficulty hearing you. I'm not sure I got all of what you said. Based on the few I got, I'm sure you're talking about betrayal and whether or not the progressives betray the people or they betray their own philosophy or their own ideology. So, or is the people that betray them? I hope I got you right. You're coming in very broken. It's not your fault.
Yeah,
I'm connected to multiple devices because the internet connection is very weak here. So I'm connected to about 3 different devices just so that I get in. However, if that's what I understood, whether the progressives betray the people or the people betray the progressives or the progressives betray their own philosophy or their own ideology, then it depends on where you are looking at it from. Your standpoint will be your viewpoint. It depends on your which class of the society, which class you belong to in the society. So the progressive largely saw their struggle as a class struggle. So if you have a particular perspective on it, there could be two ways of looking at it, either reflective of your association with a particular class or a genuine disappointment in the progressive struggle, a genuine assessment. You could either be doing an objective assessment of the progressive struggle or wanting to defend a particular class interest. Having said that, the progressive struggle was not a perfect struggle, and the progressive were not a perfect group of people. There were a lot of challenges, and they may not have lived up to the expectation of so many of their supporters, including the young progressives who wanted to follow their path. But in spite of all of the challenges that the progressive face, in spite of all their imperfections, in spite of all the difficulties in terms of inconsistencies that people observe in their political lives over the period of time, in spite of all of those, it's inaccurate to say that the progressive betray the country. The country, you have to actually, which segment of the progressive, you have to be able to dissect, progressive, because the progressive are not people who always have a meeting and say this is what we're going to do, and they all fit into it. They're a diverse group of people. They come from different cultural, social, political backgrounds, so they always have different perspective on life. Even though they were all united in the belief that it was time for us to unclinch, for the oligarchy to unclinch its fist from the country, because the country was strong health. So make sure that hold would be broken so that everyone can participate in politics and economic development freely. So when you say the progressives betray the people, you have to be able to, of course, there will be a group of people who belong to the progressive initially, who may have taken other paths. There will be mainstream progressives who show contradictory posture in some part of their life. But to give a general assessment of betrayal is inconclusive, because it shows that you did not take into consideration all of the different political, social, economic variables you probably assess. I would say progressives did not entirely betray the country, because it was thanks to them that we have multi-party democracy in Liberia. It was thanks to them that the political consciousness of the country was raised at least to a minimum extent, to a minimum level. So the contradictions in the political life of the progressives cannot amount to the betrayal of the country when you look at the totality of the struggle that they waged against the oligarchy.
All right. Thank you very much. I think the definition, what you just said, I think that's what Tipote also said. He said the progressive ideology is like a religion. So you have, for example, Muslim and Christians who have their scripture that tell them, thou shalt not do this, thou shalt not do that. And they present themselves as believers in these scriptures, but sometimes their action contradicts their own scriptures. Okay, so that does not mean that the ideology or the beliefs itself is wrong. It just means that the followers are not being sincere. So what happened to the progressive in Liberia is just that. The ideology is beautiful, the philosophy is good, but those who follow it did not have the morality, did not have the discipline to be able to follow through. So that's what Tipote said. So with that, we'll take a short break. And when we come back, we have 2 more questions to discuss with these panelists. Please don't go away.
At Focus on Liberia, we discuss everything Liberia, from education to politics, arts and culture, entertainment, agriculture, history, religion, family, and technology. Focus on Liberia uncovers and showcases the best of Liberia and shows the world the truth about Liberia. We educate, elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We conduct interviews, panel discussions, debates, and more. Tune in to Focus on Liberia on Facebook and YouTube and be a part of the stories that make up the news.
This is Focus on Liberia, and I am Dennis.
Thank you for watching Focus on Liberia. This is Roundtable Africa. I am Sekou Keller, your host, and we are discussing the topic, Dr. Amos Sawyer resigns from politics. What is next for the progressives of Liberia? And I'm here as usual with Edward Amara, my man, and we are here with two panelists, Bridget Yuja from Canada and Fano Kamara from Liberia. The next question here is, are Liberian progressive forgotten hero or failed intellectual elite? I think we touched it a little bit before we went for break. Edward Amara, there are people who believe in Liberia today, there is this slang called both people fail Liberia. This, any Liberian you ask on the street, they say both people fail Liberia. And people say it's the leftist propaganda, it's the propaganda from the like of the judge. We are now on the political scene that have some minimum education, and other people, just to make their way in the political space, they have to tell the youth that education doesn't matter. If education matters, we have PhD holders, we have a lot of educated people that govern this country, and the country still doesn't have infrastructure. So it is now time to turn to people who will use what they call quote unquote common sense people. Now, the Liberian progressives are considered as failed intellectual elite by majority of Liberians, and I really don't know why. Even I myself, a few years ago, I used to say both people fail Liberia. I used to say that until I came to myself and said, but wait a minute, why am I even saying that? Okay, is that statement even true? So I have to look at it from another angle before I came to myself and say, that statement is inconclusive. But how did the public opinion even arrive at that point to say both people fail Liberia? And whenever they say that, they refer to the progressives, because the progressives usually in Liberia, they are on the street, they speak fine English, they are very good, well-dressed, they want to bring modernity to Liberia. They are seen as the face of the intelligence of the country. So Liberian people call them both people. And they say both people fail Liberia. They give, for example, this is Samuel Kedo did well, and then what happened to Turbo and all these top men, it's very highly educated people with Queen's English in their mouth, they do nothing. So I want you to tell me, are Liberian progressive forgotten heroes? Is it that people are trying to run propaganda against their actual contribution, or they are really failed intellectual elite that did not decolonize the knowledge, decolonize the education and the system in the country? They were having good intent, but they did not have all it takes to do the job.
Thank you very much. I think I'm going to watch at it in two folds. I watch at it in a theoretical aspect. I may tend to agree with the ideology somehow. However, in the practical aspect, you will agree with the common man, because there is no corrupt Liberian who is not educated. Those who are less privileged, they are uneducated. And when you think about certain progressive leaders, you talk about like Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. She could be one. And we believe that they should be radicalized positively. Maybe they were positively radicalized and they wanted to institute social reforms into the Liberian society, with the notion that everything is going to be changed, and they watch at the vulnerability that is found into the society. Because if you watch at the society of Liberia today and you are asked to become a presidential aspirant, to draw your manifesto is very easy, because the problems of the country are feasible everywhere. So you can use that to draw your own manifesto and maybe market your idea to the people who tend to agree with you. And these are some of the things that the progressive leader did. But when they came into power, what did they do? They remained to be corrupt. You may say they holistically failed the Liberian society because there are certain things that you should use to introduce reform into the country, because we are not only targeting human resource, but also the material resource. But how many people, as I said initially, you cannot be successful until your successor succeeds. That is one, because we are thinking that if you come as a progressive person, you must understand that there is economic problem into your country, there is educational problem, there is a problem with the justice system, there is corrupt government, and let me just say everything is just negatively endemic into the country. So we are expecting progressive leaders to first reconstruct the Liberian society in terms of education system. How many progressive leaders actually invoke the Liberian education system positively? None, because they are so selfish, unscrupulous, and they tend to be corrupt as the people that we are opposing. And when we talk about progressiveness, we mean you should be a reformer. You should be there somebody who have detected fault into the society and they want to institute positive changes. But instead, when they come into power, we all see, we had, and we understood what went under the Ellen Johnson's reign. Can you arguably, as an educated person, rate her former regime as a type of progressive leadership? To me, no. You will need to be very dangerous with the truth, no, because if progressive leaders or progressive people actually did something positive, then maybe the gold coup would have been abated, because they would have seen to it. That is why the layman in Liberia today will watch at an educated person who speaks better English as a corrupt person, because they think and feel that they use their education to corrupt them. And the most corrupt people are the educated, because they're using their education to meander into situations and turn things into their own favor. That is why Liberia, economically, it is very poor. Progressive never did anything positively into that. Most of those ideas they postulated remain into theory. In terms of education, Liberia is one of the most illiterate country into the world. Maybe 30 or 40%, or even less than 40% of the youth in Liberia are educated. Even as our sister was rightly saying, you watch at the youth today, if you come to market progressive ideas, how many people will analyze it objectively? Because most of them may not even be in position to read beyond what you have told them. And if you want to be a progressive person, I think I shouldn't only just listen to what you have said, but I should also go in search of certain things to understand and analyze things on my own. But most of them cannot analyze things, and that is why they negatively radicalize those people. In time of demonstration, we have protest. And we believe that progressive leaders should be involved into protest. But you come as a progressive leader and try to teach negative radicalism or positive radicalism into the society. Those youth, just because they may not understand it, they may use it negatively. At the end of the day, your idea, the goal that you are even intending to preach, may be changed away from you. So they fail Liberia because one of the aspects they fail Liberia is the educational system. Maybe by instituting a careful and quality education in Liberia, most of the youth who are actually involved into the war wouldn't have been involved, because they would have been in position. That is why the rebellion in Liberia and Sierra Leone, all that country, we are very easy to get their market, because they met youth who were illiterate, poor, and forgotten. And it was out of the corrupt practices of those people who called themselves progressive leaders, because most of the messages that they preached to the people, they held them into high esteem, voted them, and at the end of the day, they abandoned the people. And those people tend to be the enemies of the state. So they corrupted everything. But this progressive leader, they have used their bookish mentality to manipulate constitution today. So most people who have done this, you may argue that in theory, yes, everything is there because they came with their plan, but in terms of implementation, no. So in theory, they succeeded because still there is a foundation, but in practical, no.
Thank you very much, Edward Amara. Back to you, Sister Bridget. You jump. I try to look at the old generation, what they've done, their mistakes. We can be able to see it now because they are almost in the past, so we can put them under the microscope and see what they've done wrong. But look at our generation. Are we now moving from the Tipote, from the back of Matthew, from the Taiwan Gonglo, from Amos Sawyer? We are now moving now to the George Weah, the how they call it, this boy on a radio show. And then we are now moving to the Yeke Kolubas, to these new political leaders, to Henry Costas that are calling themselves progressive, leading to insulting people, going into people's private life. Is it this moral decadence that we are seeing? Are we moving now from these people, Malcolm Matthew and what have you, that were having some kind of sanity, at least, knew exactly what philosophy and ideology they were defending? And looking at our generation, the like of Costas, the like of this city mayor, Jefferson Koji, the young people now, when they are looking at the two generations, who are they going to emulate? Are you going to, if you today are advising young people coming into politics, would you tell them, go back and look at the like of Malcolm Matthew and others, or you are going to tell them, look at the Henry Costas, look at the Jefferson Koji and the Yeke Koluba as the new light, and our new Senator Abraham Darrell Dillon that they call the light, you know, looking at these people live today right in front of us, are we saying we are better off than the old progressives?
Thank you for the question, my brother Sekou. You see, in order for sorry about that, but you asked many questions into one, and I'm trying to like balance out where to start. But if I should have a mentor and that mentorship is over, I must be better than my mentor, because I do not only learn from him or her, I also build upon that, admire, and move forward. From all of the names you had mentioned, they had someone to learn from. And who did they learn from? They learned from the people before them. So what does that tell you? So if our generation is failing now, then they must have had bad teachers. Sekou, when we look at the progressiveness in Liberia, progressivism in of itself is not bad, because it brought about efficiency on the political playing field, that there were equal political powers, that people were able to have multi-parties and all of that. But these very progressive people, like I said earlier on, they came with their own agenda. And it is not certain as to whether the agenda reflected the greater population of Liberia, whether or not it was inclusive enough, because we have nepotism in every single one of those progressive leaders who came to power, from having their cousin, brother, uncle, daughter, sons working in government and going with impunity, without impunity, to corruption, to abuse of our children and our youth. You just name it. And was that progressive? Our generation now, we're looking up to those people. I will tell you what, around 1999, 2000, I still remember this vividly. I was then in grade 4 in Cathedral School, and my brother would be walking in from school, and I'll be looking at Ellen Sirleaf Johnson, and I admired her so much. And she used to sit at a little spot just down Cathedral, and she was looked up to as the female progressive who wants to change Liberia and reform this system. But as an adult woman now, and looking back, yes, she did succeed on becoming a president. But looking at how her presidency impacted Liberia in a positive light, I have yet to measure that. So have our progressive leaders filled Liberia? To some extent. I mean, like, the legacy of the changes they made are still there. But to some extent, yes, they have. And moving forward, if we are going to call ourselves neo-progressive, we must, again, like I said before, visit the table and have a plain vision as to what progressive is and who we are. The names that you mentioned, I'm really taken aback by those people. And it makes me question a lot of things. If this is what progressive is, I don't want to be a part of it, because it does not align with my own beliefs or my values. I mentioned before, in all of our political discourse, I'm very keen when it comes to women's rights and children's rights. And I don't see any reflection in the political discourse. It's all about what shoes the president wear as opposed to which school is being developed. It's about if he built a cake that resembles an airplane. So it's like we came from this high level of progressiveness to this low. And when you pass on the message to a bunch of uneducated people who really doesn't understand what progressiveness is, they run with a baton and a stick in the streets and stand on cars and scream and put themselves on fire and in hope to change things. So my brother Sekou, I don't know if you have more questions for me, but I believe that this conversation is going to be ongoing for quite some time. Yeah.
Wow. It's very, very serious. The system really, there's something needs to be done. It's obvious something needs to be done. And then we are not on the right trajectory at all. Otherwise, like you said, we can't come from that level of progressiveness. Instead of building something better than that, we have come to this low where now it's about calling people mom, calling people dad names, and name calling, insulting people. When I listen to some of the new progressives now on this block, how they attack each other, nobody is addressing the issue. Nobody. It's all about attack. The man can speak good English. He doesn't know how to walk. He doesn't know, in fact, the way he was standing in the meeting, why he took this photo. Is that the issue? Is that the problem we've been facing since 1847? No. I really agree with you.
Just to interject there, that is why new progressive must have a sit at the table and have a very clear picture of who the progressive are. If not, any tyrant can come about and run with that notion that he is a progressive, and people will believe him. Hence the reason why the majority of our people sees progressiveness as a bad thing. Because you have the likes of people, like you said, who engages in using vocal languages, pettiness as progressiveness, and that is not what we should be about. You know, as a social reformer, we should be engaging the government in a positive light to bring about change constructively. I feel like, not even I feel, but from my observation, you have people under the banner of progressiveness even uses that just to get visa to come to the United States to further up their studies. You have people who uses that term just to sneak their way into government and sit into a position. From government to government, people come forward under this banner of progressiveness and yet repeat the same old circle. So then where is the accountability? We must be angry enough to hold our people accountable so that when we all fight for this change and somebody is elected into power, there's some form of accountability. If they're not following that principle that was set, I mean, like, where's the accountability? Corruption, where's the accountability? War and economic crimes court, you have some progressive leader will tell you that's a bad thing. Again, only because somebody who may have fought a war is related to someone else. If I sit in power, Liberia must come first. I should be able to hold even my mom accountable, even my sister accountable. But how are we going to move forward if nobody is to be held accountable, right? Yeah. So accountability plays a part here too.
Thank you very much, Sister. Edward, that brings us to the last question here. What lessons can be learned from the rise and the fall of Liberian progressives? You know, I will give you an example. You know, when these new progressives started in Liberia, we know they fought against the military junta, they fought against the True Party. They did a lot of that, you know. But now the protests that they led, Rest Riot, all the other failed protests, they brought in new ideas actually. But today in Liberia, if you want to protest against our government, you go to the U.S. Embassy. Because now it's like we felt that protesting alone doesn't change anything. It's that government are immune to protest. So when you protest, you know that nothing's going to happen. So there is no innovation. There is no innovative idea how to hold the government feet to fire. So what people do, they run to the embassy, of the United States, a sovereign country. So citizens of a country run to another country's embassy. So these are people calling themselves progressive, okay? Go to the US embassy and say, come and talk to our president. He's doing something wrong. There is nothing worse than that. If you want to see a very backward society, that's a good example. Imagine American going to Russia embassy or Chinese embassy and say, go talk to Joe Biden. We are confused with him. It will never happen. Liberians go to the US embassy to go and cry. The current ruling party, CDC, they slept to the US embassy for days. The current party chairman, Moluba Molu, slept there, begging the American embassy to sanction LA. The current progressive so-called, or I don't know whether we should call them progressive now, the Darrell DeLong and all these people, they've gone to the American embassy several times to protest against George Weah. The cycle continues. So what can we learn as new, if we want to build a new progressive today, what can we learn about a progressive attitude, how to hold society accountable, hold people accountable, and maintain our dignity, maintain the dignity of Africa, of our Liberianness, without really becoming enemies of our own state just because we want something to be done.
Thank you very much. I think he who seek for equity should come with clean hands. Unfortunately, those who are seeking for equity in Africa are not coming with clean hands. Having said that, if you watch at those who call themselves progressive leaders, especially in Liberia today, if you watch at it objectively, you may tend to disagree with it. Because being a progressive person, you're a social reformer. You must understand our cultural behaviors. And you must understand that you are seeking for the progress of the society, not for your own individual aspect. Unfortunately, these so-called progressive activists are violators of the very, very norms they tend to institute into Liberia. I will throw a very brighter example on the Henry Costa show. I have been actually following his show. He's had a lot of militant language or wordings, which are not actually good. He does call for protest. That is a fantastic one, because one of the ways to seek for social reform is to protest, because I believe that power belongs to the people. And the government who fail to listen to his citizens, his or to his citizens, people who can come out with popular protest. But what is the mentality behind the protest? These people are selfish, they're unscrupulous, they want to handle power for themselves. And most of what they are involved into doing, to me, is more or less a propagandist mentality. Because I believe that a progressive person should be somebody with analytical mentality. And when you're analyzing things, it should be very objective. But they are so negative, their wordings are wrongly directed. In fact, the insights, they become so insightful to the mentality of others. And you watch at Liberia today, Liberia need a positive person, a positively radicalized person, because illiteracy is very high, poverty is on its peak, and a lot of other crimes that are poverty related are on the rampage in the country. So if you have somebody who calls himself a progressive person who does not speak for peace, rather than to evoke young people into perpetrating crimes into Liberia, because they come, they watch, they see at what is happening, and they watch at those situations. And when they come preaching to it, with militant language cannot help the society of Liberia for now. So most of those who call themselves progressive, it's nothing good to learn from them. To me, if I want to learn anything, I should learn from others. I think if I want to learn anything positively from Amos Sawyer, I can go to his books that he has written, his mentality that is preached. But maybe he developed, or even he organized the wrong crew to propagate his mentality or his ideas. That is why he has seen everything wrong the wrong way. We have presidents who may come with a good intention, but if you organize the wrong crew who do not actually understand your own dream, your progressive mentality will end the very day you started it, because people come with different things. So if you want to call yourself a progressive person, you should have a progressive team. But you are going to develop a progressive team, then you call yourself a progressive person, who is definitely going to walk away from your own ideas. So there is nothing good that I can generate from them. However, I can learn positively from our father's generation progressive leaders, not what they implemented in theory, but what they implemented, not in practical, but what they implemented in theory. Because even when you listen to their speeches, they were very civilized. And even the protests, they never instigated anybody. But it is now that you see a progressive leader on street, evoking all sorts of abusive language on others. And in fact, they will be the first people to start abusing your president. Say whatsoever thing. And you have illiterate youth over there who may not analyze the idea, because when you call yourself an educated, progressive person, there should be a change into your ideology, a change into your attitude. But the attitude still remain negative. Then you are there to wrongly radicalize the young people. That is why you are seeing the Liberian society. No wonder most protests organized today in Liberia will always end negatively. It is because of the ringleaders who call themselves progressive leaders. They are not well organized. They are not good. They are not patterned on a good mentality. And those that we meet will not have the objective mentality to analyze things. So bulk of those who even follow them may be half-baked, who do not actually understand what they are heading into. So you may see that they are using the prevailing circumstances into Liberia to their own advantage. Whenever they are given the opportunity, you will see the negative aspect of them. Finally, to conclude my statement, to no person, just give him money and power. And these are the same thing that these progressive leaders want. When they get it, they will show them their true color. Because absolute power corrupts system, absolutely. We have seen that on numerous occasions. So that is why I think it is high time this generation started checkmating our progressive leaders, those who are advocating on our behalf, to understand exactly whose mentality to follow, or else our society will continue to be a disintegrated one.
Thank you very much, Edward. Amara, before we get final statement from both of you, I'd like to read the comment so you know what the audience are saying about your contribution. So we have here Maria Dia Gia. The settlers were the founding father for whom? So okay, all right. I didn't get that. I think she's saying that why do we call them founding fathers? Jiple Cabral Chebo. Progressives are left-leaning Pan-African social forces within Liberia and Africa, but generally left-leaning forces. Okay. We have Mary Gia again says, speak, my sister, with no particular reservation but the truth. Talking to Sister Bridget. And then Jiple said, I agree with you, Yuja, a new way forward. Chebo against a progressive left a great legacy for multi-party democracy and free speech. Okay. I think that's what many people agree with that, including myself. Then Jebo again is still here. Jiple, sorry. Right-wing propagandists from the True We Party are bent on defining progressive forces. We will not allow that. Well, that's true. There is many people are defining it differently. The Evangeline, Mamita, most of the young generation do not take their time to read or are uneducated. That's very true. We have Mary Gia again say, as the sister indicated, the reason for our semi-education and non-book educated citizens misinterpreted the ways of the progressive is due to their inability to educate the people. Evangeline again said, we need another great aggressive leader or leaders. Progressive, I think she means. Indigenous name from Meridia again said, indigenous names all the way. I have always had an indigenous name because my parents and grandparents were country people, as the group was referred to. Never say away from my origin for anyone. I agree with you. So let me go fast. The comments are many. I can't read all of them. So let me read the last one here from Gplay because the comments are so many. I can't read all of them. So Macavent Levy Madison. Progressive politics of Liberia were practicalized by militancy. The slogans, speeches, dress code, modus operandi are blazing testimonies. That's very true. And then there's a comment here that caught my attention where Gplay was saying that we are mixing issues. Okay, I got it. He said you are mixing right-wing folks here with progressive. How you there to Henry Costa here? So I don't know how you guys are going to react to this comment because some are saying that we are mixing it up. There are people we are calling progressives and they are not progressive. I think that's why Sister Bridget said in the beginning that this term is relative. There are certain people you don't consider progressive, they consider themselves to be progressives. So anyone can come and say I'm a progressive. So you cannot exclude someone because they decided to be progressive, but just that they're doing it the way you don't want it. So that's why people that say it's a religion. Everybody join, but not everybody is really going to be a sincere believer. That's what happened to the progressive. Sister Julia, your final comment to young people. What would you say to young people today on the street? You have groups like EFF, we have the red cap, the red t-shirt. They are economic freedom fighters. They are fighting for the betterment of Liberia. They're fighting against corruption. They look in their militancy outfit and they are on the street. We have the CDC Sabu unit. We have the opposition also having, there's a lot of militant group, almost, I don't want to use the word rebel, but a lot of militant groups in the country still giving all that fresh memory of our civil war. We have the leaders that are sitting back behind the decks. They are not doing anything better. They are only there to fight. You see what is happening recently in the CPP, people fighting each other for sometimes minor things that don't really matter, that don't really concern the development of the country, all for power grabs. What will you say to young people that want to join politics today? How should they see progressiveness? And what should be the right way to join politics and contribute to society?
Brother Seko, for me, there is no right or wrong way to join politics and be productive. However, these young people that are on the street that have split themselves into several fractions or groups, they are a byproduct of what we have created. And I say we because I don't want to separate myself from the problem. These guys are a byproduct of the very people who call themselves progressive, yet utilize the strength and the willpower of these young people while taking advantage of their ignorance and lack of education, and put these guys in the street for the sake of votes or popularity. I will say to any young person out there who are wanting to be progressive is to define what that means for you. And I say for you because I will go back again to say this is a very subjective term. When we look at progressivism on the holistic level, we're looking at just not one sector, the political piece, we're looking at the economic, we're looking at the social piece, we're looking at every dynamics that comes together to form a society. So young people out there, define what that means for you, and before becoming a part of any political party or group, again, understand their beliefs, understand their values, understand their principle, and do not engage in a group or based upon who's in that group that you like or do not like. I always say I'm a big fan of saying that like or dislike does not bring about positive change. You can like something and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be good for you. You can dislike something and yet it's good for you. So we should make informed decision. Our decision should be based upon research and studies into which group, which party that we find ourselves in. But again, it goes back to the lack of education in our country. Brother Sekou, I was just recently in Liberia, and you have 5, 6, 7 years old in the marketplace and they're selling instead of going to school. So as neo-progressive individuals, we should take upon ourselves to also help to educate people, one families at a time, even if it means creating brochures, creating pamphlets, creating pictures, vision boards of what progressivism looks like, and separating ourselves from tyranny as opposed to because these bodies of people from the names that you've called, I would call their names, they have come out there and display themselves as progressive. And the common people will not be able to differentiate between that as true progressive or just, I can find the best word.
Right, that's the issue. The common people really can't, because someone, G-Play is saying, no, you don't call those one progressive. Okay. I can do that. We can do that, but yes, the common people don't see that.
They're not able to differentiate that. And these guys are coming in the name of social reform. They're coming in the name of the greater good of the people. But I like to say that in order for self-interest to be rightly understood, it must be understood within the greater interest of the people. So when you look at a young person trying to be progressive, which I've seen, a lot of young people are joining groups, association, political parties. Ask yourself, like, what does this mean for me? Align your own values along with that person or that group's value, and see where you can measure the two. But I encourage you, my brother Sekou, that we should sit at the table and redefine what progressivism really means. Because somebody can come and say that the likes of Charles Taylor were fighting for the freedom of Liberian people. He was progressive. So we need to really clear that out.
Thank you very much, Sister Bridget. We are very grateful for your contribution today. We are happy that you came on the show. We will continue to be in contact with you. We always like you to come here and help us, to share your knowledge and also, share light on some of these social, political issues of our country, because this is a continual process of learning, and we are all learning until we can have a better society. So thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you.
It's my pleasure, Brother Sekou. Thank you.
Yeah. Edward Amara, your closing statement. What do you say to young people in Liberia today that are on the street? They are looking for new heroes. You get to Liberia right now, you have some kind of powerful jeep, put some money in their pocket, and the boys are ready to wear red uniform and sing for you. Munya, munya, munya. What do you say to young people? What is at stake? What is politics? Why should they join politics? And why should they join the progressives and not just go around and be dancing for people? Even when your leaders take the country money, they go for treatment abroad. When they are coming back, you go to dance for them at the airport. What do you say to our young people?
I think poverty normally makes us to hate corruption, and yet we love the corrupt because of what we receive from them out of the corrupt practices they may have done. Having said that, I think we should watch at the like of Yoweri Museveni of Uganda, who came as a progressive leader, now he's a dictator. You think that Charles Taylor, who came as a progressive leader, he destroyed Liberia. You look at Yahya Jammeh, who's now in exile in Equatorial again. He came in as a progressive person, overthrowing former president of the Gambia, of the first president, the independent father of the Gambia. He overthrew that government. He came into power. When you watch at Africa holistically, you have only few people to think. I may take a positive progressive leader like the late John Magufuli. When he came in, you saw it into him. He refused all of those things, and I think development was actually happening into Tanzania prior to his death, though he's lost his life. You watch at the current man into Ivory Coast, Alassane Ouattara. He thinks that he's a progressive leader. He opposed the like of what Laurent Gbagbo. He came into power. He did the same thing. You watch at the detained president into Guinea, Alpha Conde. He opposed Lansana Conde. When he came, he did the same thing. I think it is high time Liberians start to watch outside the box and watch at people who spread similar messages and how they lord it over their head. Maybe the best way that Liberians can rate those who claim to be progressive leaders or progressive activists to Liberia positively, except if they have quality education, because they already have a situation that is definitely affecting them. And these progressive leaders use those situations to install themselves into power. Immediately they come, they tend to manipulate everything. Now, you rightly stated, most people clap hands for progressive leaders on the street, and at the end of the day, when they get what they want, they forget about them. It is because poverty. And normally the three greatest enemies of mankind are poverty, illiteracy, and ignorance. These people are poor, they are illiterate, and they are even ignorant to whatsoever thing that may be on. So they look for cheap things that can chicken change given to them, they sell their birthright. Maybe we need to advise Liberian youth to start getting a careful and quality education. Because even now we are seeing a lot of, because we watch at the demography of Liberia, it's a young constructed population, but that population, will it benefit Liberia in the long run? You tend to question the idea, because how many of them are actually going to school, and how many of them are taking their education as something paramount into their life? You get into Liberia, you meet boys in ghetto 10 to 11, 12 years, sister rightly mentioned, somebody 7 to 8 years is selling on the street. You ask that person, cannot even spell his or her name completely. So where do you think same generation will end up in the space of 15 years time? It is the same negatively radicalized people will come and start to preach that we are able to solve your problem, because they think they already have a problem is poverty. They are illiterate, they are ignorant, and they can easily follow them. Maybe Liberians, especially the youth, should bend on their education system. If they have the careful and quality education, immediately somebody who speaks from a negative progressive way, they will know how to judge him. But apart from that, I'm really, really afraid we may find it very difficult to solve the problem. Nevertheless, I remain to be an optimistic person. And I believe that with positive shows like this, maybe those who may be watching at it, listen to it and analyze it, and even those who may be educated but not understood what we have just explained, we start to judge them positively and negatively, depending on the message that they are going to push.
Thank you, Edward Amara. Always your contribution is valued, and we are very, very grateful that you came on the show today. To our listening audience, sorry we did not put out the call out there for people to call in, because with the necessary gadgets were not available. So that's why you were not able to call in to contribute. But next time we'll get it right. From what I gathered from our audience and from our panelists here today, guys, a progressive is a social and political reformer, someone who comes to reform the system so that the water can flow down to everybody, so that at least there is now 1% on the top holding everything. The reform, number one, the social justice system, so that everybody gets justice, so that you don't have to be rich and powerful before you get justice. Everyone's voice is heard. Children are protected. Women's rights are respected. The system works for everybody. You don't have to be the son of somebody or daughter of somebody before you get a job. You don't have a lady don't have to sell herself before she get that position in the office. Everybody is protected. Everybody is respected. The just society that we want is what the progressive are supposed to stand for. So we should watch out. If anyone who comes in the name of progressiveness, they do not walk the talk, we should cast them into garbage. They are not progressive. They are opportunists. They are wicked people that are trying to use any platform just to get into office. The neo-progressive movement of our time, we should watch out. People who walk the talk. Let's go for scientific data, track record. What does the person believe? Not because the person is from my tribe, is from my religion, is from my county, my village. When we do that, then we turn our society backward. Let's judge people based on their ideas, based on their competence, based on what they can contribute. As a social worker, I tell people, when I look at a society where 1% are rich, and people say, oh, the people are poor, Liberians are lazy, that's why they are poor, they are not hardworking. No, wherever there is high privilege for 1%, that means there is oppression going on in that system. Wherever you see just 2% are just rich, riding flashy car, and other people are poor, oppression is going on. In order for you to have that privilege, you need to oppress other people. That's what is going on. The system is not working. So the neo-progressive, we need to sacrifice. We have to forget about getting rich, wanting all these things. We have to fight to distribute prosperity, justice in the system. You don't have to be president to do that. We can do that from the grassroots. We can do that by building civil organization, pressure groups. We can do that peacefully without insulting people's mothers, without breaking stores. We don't need all those things. Martin Luther King led a non-violent protest, one of the greatest in the world, and led to so many changes in the history of the United States. He did not pick up bullet. He didn't break people's stores. So we can be able to emulate and learn from these people and move our society forward. With that, I say thank you for watching Focus on Liberia and Roundtable Africa. We will see you again next week, Wednesday, the same time. And we'll close with our classic song, We Are All Liberians. Thank you.
We are Liberians.